The scream that shattered my life came at 6:30 in the morning, a sound so raw, so gut-wrenching, it jolted me off the couch, still wearing my milk-soaked work uniform, clutching my 6-month-old Emma, who was wailing even harder than I was. I wish I could say I remember every detail, but honestly, that day moved in a blur. All I know is by 7:15 my car was being towed right out of our driveway. By 9:30 my baby was gone. And by noon, Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, was in handcuffs charged with kidnapping. Yeah, that really happened. And if you think there's no way something this insane could go down in a quiet American suburb, just buckle up for this story, because what happened to me could happen to anybody who crosses the wrong person with too much power and not enough heart. See, Willowbrook Heights was one of those neighborhoods where everything looks perfect, from the outside lawns mowed within an inch of their life, front doors painted to match the mailboxes, and that suffocating sense of order that only exists when people are terrified to stand out. I never fit in. My husband David was deployed overseas, and between holding down a part-time job at the local clinic and caring for a baby by myself, keeping up with all those rules felt like drowning in quicksand. But none of that mattered to Karen Whitmore. She was the HOA president, and in her eyes, every minor infraction, whether it was grass 2 inches too long or a pink tricycle on the lawn, was a personal attack on her kingdom. That morning, through my smeared window, I saw her arms flailing, blonde hair whipping in the wind, face red enough to match the morning sun as she pointed at Emma's tricycle. 3 warnings. Mrs. Martinez. 3. That eyesore has been polluting our community standards for weeks. I tried reasoning with her, holding my sobbing baby, exhausted beyond words, just begging her to calm down. It was 6:30, for God's sake. But she just sneered, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. You owe this community $480 in unpaid HOA fees. Your grass is a mess, and now you're turning our respectable neighborhood into a daycare. You have 24 hours to pay up, or I take action. There was something in the way she said action that made my skin crawl. When I spotted the tow truck idling at the end of my block, my stomach dropped through the floor. You called a tow truck for a kid's toy? I asked, already knowing the answer. No, she replied sweetly. I called it for your car. Unpaid HOA fees mean I get to have vehicles removed from community property. Your driveway counts. The worst part wasn't losing the car. It was seeing the look on Emma's face, confusion turning to terror as her world slipped further out of control. Neighbors started to come out. Mrs. Chin, the elderly woman next door, who'd always treated me kindly, even Mrs. Johnson from across the street. But Karen's power was like a force field, enforcing community standards, she announced, ignoring their protests as my car was chained up and carted away. I wanted to scream, to fight, but I was just empty. This isn't over, I managed to say, and for the first time I actually believed it. The next few days blurred together, walking everywhere, calling in sick, rationing baby food, praying for David's pay to clear so I could scrape together enough money to buy back my own life. Then came Friday, and with it a fresh hell. Karen showed up again, this time with 2 security goons in a silver SUV. She pounded on my door, clipboard in hand, looking like she'd just won the lottery. By the power vested in me by the Willowbrook Heights HOA, she announced, I'm here to collect payment or begin asset seizure. I tried to reason with her, begged for more time, but she was ice cold. You've had 60 days. Step aside. They pushed into my living room, Emma screaming, those men looking over her swing, her playmat, even her high chair. Those are my baby's things, I shouted, blocking their way. Should have thought of that before you ignored your debts, Karen snapped, scribbling on her clipboard. It was like watching vultures circle. Mrs. Chin yelled from outside, but Karen just told the guards, don't let her in. This is HOA business. And then the moment that still haunts me, overwhelmed, desperate. I left Emma in her swing for just a minute so I could use the bathroom, told them, don't touch her, she's perfectly safe. That minute felt like an eternity. When I came back, the living room was empty. Emma gone. The swing gone. I raced outside in a panic that burned in my bones. There was Karen, arms folded. Emma in her grip, screaming for me. She's just collateral. Karen told me, all smugness and fake calm, pay your debt or you don't get her back. I fell to my knees, sobbing, crawling across the grass, begging her. She needs to eat. She's never been away from me. But Karen just shook her head, stepped into her SUV and drove away with my baby. The world spun. Mrs. Chin helped me up, shaking with outrage. "We call police now," she said. "No room for argument. Taking baby from mother is never legal. Never." The cops arrived fast. 2 officers, Rodriguez and Thompson. I blurted out my story, barely coherent, showing them the fake legal documents Karen had waved around. Their faces went from confusion to fury. "No HOA in the country has the authority to take a child," Officer Thompson said. "This is kidnapping. We're escalating to the FBI." The next hour was a nightmare, riding in the back of a police car, radio crackling, every neighbor on alert, people searching parking lots and malls. It was Mrs. Johnson, of all people, who remembered Karen liked to shop at Westfield when she was stressed. That's where they found her, on the second floor of a children's clothing store, holding Emma on one hip and a stack of pink dresses in her hand, acting like she was out for a normal day. I burst through the doors screaming Emma's name. Emma saw me and reached out, wailing like her heart was breaking. "Ma'am, hand over the child," Officer Thompson said, but I didn't wait. I just ran, snatched Emma into my arms, and held her so tight I thought I'd never let go. Karen tried to argue, said she was just babysitting, but the officers weren't buying it. They arrested her on the spot, right there in front of a dozen shoppers with their phones out, documenting the downfall of the HOA queen. Back at the station, the truth unraveled fast. Karen's legal paperwork was bogus. She had no authority. Not a single HOA anywhere could have done what she claimed. The FBI got involved, and suddenly everything she'd been doing was under a microscope, embezzling funds, fabricating documents, even taking an old man's medical equipment in her last neighborhood, which landed him in the hospital. The news blew up. The video of Karen's arrest went viral, and people everywhere started talking about HOA bullying. My neighbors, who'd been scared to stand up before, finally banded together, offering help, money, food, whatever they could. Even that moody teenager down the street slipped an envelope of cash into my hand, blushing, but proud. With Karen locked up, the community voted to start over. Mrs. Chin became the new president. The first rule was, no more harassment ever, and folks who'd barely spoken to each other started sharing dinners, babysitting, even planting a community garden. 3 months later, I was sitting in a federal courthouse, David home on emergency leave. Emma asleep on my lap as Karen sat in an orange jumpsuit, and the jury found her guilty on all counts. Justice. Real satisfying justice. 6 months on Willowbrook Heights was unrecognizable. Front yards filled with toys and flowers instead of warnings and fines, neighbors actually helping each other, the community stronger than ever. Emma ran around the front yard with her little friends. David was finally home, and every time I saw Mrs. Chin waving from her garden, I felt this quiet pride, knowing we'd built something better from the ashes. People started reaching out, mothers from other states, strangers fighting their own HOA battles, saying our story gave them the courage to stand up. Turns out when you push back against petty power and fight for what's right, you light a spark that spreads. And on peaceful evenings, sitting on the porch, I'd watch Emma playing by that pink tricycle. Yeah, I kept it in the yard as a reminder not of the day Karen tried to break us, but the day our community chose love over fear. We proved that real strength isn't about rules or authority, but about compassion and the guts to fight for each other, no matter what. So tell me, what would you have done? Was justice served, or does the problem run deeper? Drop your thoughts below, because this isn't just my story anymore. It's a wake-up call for every neighborhood out there.